This video has been brought to you by Tees for Tims. Remember, if you're looking for some really good quality Celtic merch at this delicate time where you might not want to put money into the club, then choose the independent retailers like Tees for Tims. There is some fantastic designs available all across the website, like this one I am wearing now, amongst many others. If you're looking for gifts this Christmas time, anything at all, check out Tees for Tims and you will find so many there. Use code RYAN118 for a 10% discount at checkout.
Keep 100% of your claim. G4 Claims.
If you've been hurt in a road accident that wasn't your fault, you should really talk to G4 Claims first. Unlike road accident solicitors, we don't charge you for our services, which could see you better off. To keep 100% of your compensation, have a chat with Nicole and the team. You'll be glad you did. Search online for G4 Claims.
Keep 100% of your claim. G4 Claims.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Sellik the Thunder podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Fitzsimons. Welcome to episode 153. We're back to square one, the way it was all those episodes ago. And you'll see we're even filming it the old-fashioned way. We're all lined up here, ready to rant one by one. And I'm sure we have a lot to say. So we're back. It's good to be back after a few weeks. Or is it, Kieran Auld? Or is it good to be back?
Absolutely not. I mean, it feels almost foreign to be back here. It feels like it's been a good while. Yep. And I feel like the stuff that we're going to be talking about tonight is maybe symptomatic of what we spoke about all day weeks ago.
Yep. And
things coming to fruition. But I'll let the pleasantries get out the way first before I blow the fucking
Are you
roof
good
off this
otherwise,
place.
basically?
Aye. I mean, it is pretty good. I mean, I'll be on holiday in a couple of weeks, so I can just forget about all this.
It's like Celtic have knocked us off. They're responsible for knocking us off their stride a wee bit, because we usually come in the Thursday night. We had a nice wee routine, but no, we can't make it to the Champions League, so they kind of pod us out here on a Monday now, and now we still don't really know what rota to fall into, annoyingly. But nonetheless, Dylan, you were here the last time we sat down, and that was an episode where there was negatives to discuss, but there was also a kind of notion that things would maybe get better. They've got worse. They've got far, far worse. So, I mean, how are you feeling since the last time we spoke?
I suppose a lot of stuff's happened since then, no in a good way, but it's that way, like when you started this podcast, it was like COVID, wasn't it? I was going to wear my COVID jacket, like my Sellik green and yellow one, to fit the vibes, but I ended up, I was too cold, so...
when we were sitting on the Zoom calls in January of 2021, calling for the head of Neil Lennon. By the way, we could have a lot.
I know that there could be some
Lenny chat
parallels to this one.
There could be a lot of Lenny chat on this episode after his fucking actions and his words on Sunday. But nonetheless, we'll hold. There's a lot to cover. It's good to have you, Kieran. It's good to have you, Dylan. I know a lot of people have been waiting for content today, tonight, and this has gone up a wee bit later. And I thought that it would be best to just have people to actually talk to about things, because for the last God knows how long I've sat in the channel and I've spoke about the state Celtic are in. I've talked about the pressure that the manager's probably under. I've talked about the way some players have played, but it's all been my own opinions, and I think it's nice to get other people on board. The only thing is, where do you begin? With the mess that Celtic are in right now, with the questions that are being asked, and with the future looking grimmer by the week, I feel like there's just a whole plethora of issues that we could begin with. And I guess we'll start with Sunday, because Sunday was maybe a kind of perfect storm for Celtic, in the sense that all the imperfections were on display. The lack of squad depth, the poor quality in our squad, the managerial decisions that have been bonkers, the poor backing of the Celtic board, everything just came to fruition, and now we are 8 points behind Hearts in the league table. Kieran, it was a weekend to forget. Just when you thought things would maybe get better after the win against Sturm Graz, but no, brought right back down to earth, and here we are.
I know, as you said, I think it is a culmination. Everything that we spoke about so far this season, every failing that's happened so far, I feel like everything's been building up to this point. Hearts was always going to be a difficult game, regardless of what season you're playing. You've seen it's a difficult place for us to go in the past, even when we've got Celtic teams that are flying.
Yep.
But going into this game, everybody had this rightful air of pessimism because things just have not been good enough at Celtic so far this season. It can go all the way back to the board, back to the summer transfer window, the manager's tactical decisions. Obviously, a plethora of injuries as well. Coming into Tynecastle, being forced to play Colby Donovan, Dane Murray, players that you wouldn't normally see featuring in the starting 11, but it was just a disaster yesterday. I mean, you get to the point where you're 1-0 down, being under constant pressure for the first 7 or 8 minutes of the game, and they get a goal, and amongst it, granted, an own goal, but I mean, we'll talk more about poor Dane Murray's performance, but it was just, you get yourself back into the game. Calum McGregor, seemingly in that first half, right, after Thursday against Stonegras in that game, you're thinking, right, he's taking a bit of responsibility, driving the team forward, but that just was not reciprocated by the rest of the team. It felt we could have been 2-1 up before half time. God knows what Benjamin Negrin is attempting to do with that. Just smash it into the net. And then going into the second half, like Celtic so many times this season, the second half, we just turned off.
Yep.
We never done anything. And within the blink of an eye, 10 minutes into that second half, you're 3-1 down.
Yep.
And I said this to my dad watching the game yesterday. At 2-1 down, you've still got that wee glimmer of hope, but for it was just the calamity of the penalty being given away when it really, the guy was going nowhere with it. It's just, it's so frustrating because when you're 3-1 down, in previous years you might think, right, this team's got a bit of something about them. This team is devoid of any real fight or determination to try and get a result. It feels we're so static in our play. But I'll let Dylan come in so we can get a word done about it.
No, I just think Kieran's hit every nail on the head there. I think you look at like previous Celtic teams and like when you go to Tynecastle, you always feel it was going to be a struggle anyway. It's like probably the hardest place to go, to be honest, other than Ibrox. But you're seeing the result on Thursday and you've seen us create a good amount of chances and thought, right, if you're going into the Hearts game, a wee bit of confidence now, 3 points, first win in the Europa League, so you're hoping to kick on for there. But it was just right away I seen the lineup, and it's not just hindsight. When I seen Murray starting, I thought, I don't know why he was throwing the boy into the biggest game of the season at Tynecastle. Like, you've got a £6 million defender sitting on the bench. Simpson Pusey again, I still don't understand why we even signed him in the first place, but it was just, I do feel sorry for the boy because at the end of the day I think it's Rodgers to blame for even bringing him in, but it's just a really frustrating game and now we're 8 points behind. So
the Dane Murray situation in itself is one that I made my opinion clear on social media. I've not been quite as on the side of most people are. I think that it was a disaster. I think we would have got pumped no matter who started, but I do agree with the sentiment of it all. It was a very tall task to ask him and go on and do well in that game. Maybe when you've seen far more minutes, they probably should have as well. You maybe should hook him when you clearly see he's struggling. A lot of baffling decisions by the manager, but Dylan, as Kieran touched on in the second half, I think that it just, Celtic are just so lifeless. There's nothing there. There's nothing there in that team, and I get it. We are so devoid of any real quality in terms of actual players. We're missing Jota, we're missing Iheanacho, who is another one that we still don't know if is the real deal anyway. We're missing so many different people. We're missing any presence on the right hand side, but it felt like we just kind of accepted our fate almost, and it's been the story of Celtic season. You see a glimpse of it against Motherwell when you come back from 2-1 down to win the game. You see a glimpse of it against Sturm Graz when you come from 1-0 down to win a big European game, but it's not been convincing enough, and you just wonder if we're actually ever going to be able to find that rhythm, that stride, to be a team that you can believe in those moments ever again.
I think you're spot on, right? I think when you look at this team now, there's no fight, there's no hunger, and it's just a Celtic team you don't recognise. Like in previous years, as Kieran said, if you're 3-1 down, you fancy us to get a goal back, maybe push on and try and get an equaliser, have a fight to the end. But even the Dundee game as well, like 70 minutes played, you're 2 goals behind or whatever, and there's just, it's over. Like there's just no fight. And I look at that team right now, I know we've got injuries and that, but I still think it's not an excuse, because you look at that team now and there's nobody that can grab the game with the scruff of the neck and be a hero. Like Kenny up front, non-existent. The midfield, like I think Rio Hatate again, he's been really poor this season, didn't show up again in a big game. Negrin on the right, Negrin's just really frustrating right now. Like think he's our top goal scorer. I think that sums it up right now. He's our top goal scorer. I mean, the amount of chances that boy's missed, and
how can somebody playing that bad be your top scorer?
I think that just shows the state we're in now. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's the guy that's been scoring goals for us, even though he's missed about 20 other ones. So it's just, you look at that team and it's like there's nobody there at field that can change the season for us. And I mean, people can talk about maybe Hearts will make it last, but that way I'm more worried about us. I don't think we've got the way to go on a winning streak. So
that's exactly what my thinking's been, because there's obviously been a lot of discourse online about the validity of Hearts being title challengers coming up into this game, and people writing it off as Aberdeen last season. And I mean, that's the thing with Aberdeen last season, they had a flawless record after 10 games. So did we. That was the difference. We were playing very good, they fell off. The difference between that Aberdeen team and this Hearts team is, even if you take away the players and that, the guy in the dugout completely changes it, because Derek McInnes is a seasoned veteran when it comes to Scottish football. Like, we can talk about people knowing the league and things like that, but this is, when it comes to this, he does know the league. That's why Hearts should have, even before that game at the weekend, should have been taken far more seriously than Aberdeen, because Aberdeen, granted, they started well. Half of the games last season Aberdeen won, they should have lost.
Yeah, I think that's why the bigger difference is, and I think people only really ignore. Look, listen, this isn't me coming out and saying, "Oh, Hearts are about to go and win the league." I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is, you look back to that Aberdeen team. There was games they were scraping by, and they were quite lucky with it. Then we all seen the real Aberdeen as the collapse happened. Whereas Hearts, everything's gone right for them, and I mean everything. Like the tactics on the pitch, they're going right. The goals are getting scored, and they're getting scored in good ways. The Jamestown analytics system seems to be an absolute masterclass. So like, this is the difference between Hearts and Aberdeen right now, where it seemed like Aberdeen were maybe riding in a wee bit of momentum. Feels like Hearts are actually doing something serious and putting forward an actual valid challenge. There's a lot of validity behind what they're doing.
I mean, I'm not sitting here and saying Hearts are going to keep up this ridiculous run of form for the entire season. It's not viable for most teams to do that. In any other season, you'd expect them, they will lose games eventually, but it's whether or not you have the faith in Celtic to go on that winning streak like we need to do. We need to try and get some wins on the board, but obviously it's we always harp back to it, but it is about performance as well, because there's been a lot of spells in RODGERS' second stint as manager where you felt we were getting results, but I mean, even the arse end of last season, you felt we were getting results. Obviously we were dropping points as well, but it was that sort of lackadaisical effort, it seemed, for the team. Like, we didn't need to push ourselves. And now we're in a position where the team is very clearly no attempting to push themselves. Any semblance of creativity you see, it's never on a consistent basis. It's always sparse and sporadic. You need somebody to grab this team by the scruff of the neck and just get them a few results under the belt, and hopefully the performances follow. But right now, none of that looks within arm's reach.
Look, listen, we're going to talk a lot about Brendan Rodgers in his position, and the position he finds himself in with his future. That's going to be probably the main chunk of this episode. I think that's the biggest conversation that people are tuning in for, to be honest, and the biggest one that's dominating the Celtic fan space right now. But I think that, just to come on to what you're talking about with the team and the moments of quality and stuff, Dylan, and you alluded to it, what you said with the likes of Hatate and Nygren, and you mentioned all these guys, but it feels like right now a lot of players are really making a case for putting their Celtic career 6 foot under. I think there's a lot of players that are going to struggle to see a light at the end of the tunnel with the way that we are playing right now. No matter what happens with Rodgers, whether Rodgers is here by next week or no, or whether he's here next season or no, I mean, I don't really know what the timescale is for the managerial situation, but a lot of these players are not making a case. Some of these new signings are players that you could make a valid argument to get rid of in future transfer windows. A lot of the mainstays who have been here for years are making cases to be, put out the door and come in transfer windows. It feels like right now we are kind of in a death march, of all things, from every area of the club, from the board who have, basically made all of this happen, to the manager who seems to be walking the plank, and now to a team who are, quite frankly, on their last legs, it feels. I mean, it feels like we are witnessing the death of the club right now, never mind anything else. Not to be dramatic, I don't mean like we're in a Sheffield Wednesday or a Rangers type situation, but it does feel like we're just at somebody's on their last legs and we don't know them anymore.
I know, and I feel like that way, you look at that Celtic team now, and I think it's honestly just a bang average team. Like, I feel like we've even got away with sometimes. Like, look at the Motherwell game as well. Like, the team was poor, and like we get gifted an equaliser, and then albeit we get the winner then. But it's just games like that. Even the Kelly game as well, we get away with it. So it's like that could have been even further behind. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, and then you're going into this game against Rangers, a team that's still I know they get their first win there, but that's a Rangers team that's been poor all season. We've the only team not to score against them at Ibrox, and now we're going into that game against Rangers, and we don't feel confident. We actually think we're going to get beat, and that is really concerning. To like, that just sums up the way the year's having, because I think you've seen that, like, we've not went in a winning streak in 2025. The drop off since Bayern Munich's been incredible. It just feels like it is going to get worse. Like, you're looking at the next coming games, and like you've still got the European games to worry about when Hearts don't need to worry about that, and it's like, do we have enough in the tank to get back into this title race?
It's a big question, and let me play the role as host. I will play the role of the devil's advocate. And this isn't me saying I adhere to some of these opinions, but I'm just here to be that neutral host at times. There are people who look at this and go, the situation is fine. Hearts won't win the league. We'll get our stuff together. Remember, we're dealing with injuries. We're dealing with a poor Celtic side. There's a lot of players there that simply aren't good enough, and once Celtic get going, they'll get going and everything will be okay. I don't think there's many people left that are looking at it like that, but there are people out there who still think that, you know, I'm sitting here saying it feels like we're witnessing the death of this version of Celtic. It feels like the manager's on walking the plank, and people will go, don't be ridiculous, don't be dramatic, there's a lot more to worry about at higher levels, and eventually we'll sort it all out. But I don't think, Kieran, that there's a position right now to now not be devil's advocate. I don't think there's an angle where I can look at things and go, nah, things will pick up. I'm optimistic. Do I think that Celtic can make up the 8 points that Hearts need to drop at this current moment? Absolutely no. Do I think that Celtic can go to Hampden and beat Rangers on Sunday? Very dubious. So, you know, what's happened to end up at this point, and how can I legitimately sit here and say things will change? I don't know if things will change. I really don't.
See, I mean, looking for that point of view, I mean, as you said, very few people you'd imagine are holding that viewpoint right now, but they're looking at it for, it's just blind optimism right now, because obviously we can hark back to previous seasons where you know that the levels Celtic can reach. I mean, you only need to go back a year to look at the levels Celtic could reach, but since that point, that was a team you would, at the time, have backed to come against any point gap. But now, well, 8 points behind Hearts, which in itself is a wild sentence.
Yep.
At the weekend, I mean, assuming they beat St Mirren midweek, Hearts will be playing in league action this weekend whilst we are in the Cup. They could potentially be 11 clear, and we have a game in hand on them. It
could be more if we don't beat Falkirk, can it?
Aye.
Well,
That's
is best case scenario stuff.
Mental, that's best case scenario. But no.
Just to be clear, Celtic could be 14 points behind by the weekend. There's a world that could happen.
But I mean, as we're talking about, 8 points on the face of it, in any normal season, any normal day, is not insurmountable. 8 points is doable, and I can get that point of view for people. But as we were talking about, what are you watching right now that gives you that optimism that this is a side that can find that fight, find that hunger to go and be better? Because
can he score goals?
I know what I've watched with my own eyes all season, and it's been subpar. It has been dreadful. Everything, for the effort levels for the players to the tactical setup, and obviously Ostem's down for the board, and I'm sure we'll go more into the RODGERS debate, but I think I want to get it out there right now is, I feel like it's maybe becoming divided into the camp. Say, if you're saying you want RODGERS out, it means you're putting the blame entirely on him and you're absolving the board. But I think, I'm not saying I want RODGERS out the now, but the patience is wearing thin, and I think it's alright to be wanting the board out, but also criticise RODGERS. It feels like there's a lot of people that
you have to be one or the other.
They're polarised. You can't hold the two beliefs simultaneously. But I think it's alright to criticise and acknowledge the fact that RODGERS has been hung out to dry by this board. I don't think anybody in the Celtic support, bar Neil Lennon, is going to challenge that notion. But it is also okay to say RODGERS, who's supposed to be this elite level man manager, he can't get a tune out these players on a consistent basis, and we now find ourselves 8 points behind Hearts. 8 points behind Rangers would have been bad enough any other season. 8 points behind Hearts on the face of it is a sackable offence.
I mean, listen, we're going to get into the RODGERS conversation, I think, in a moment by the sounds of things, but do you think that maybe makes it, you know, if this was Rangers, the outcry would probably be far more unanimous and far worse. Is the fact is the fact that Hearts are the ones leading the charge by 8 points, maybe softening it for some people because they just have this subconscious feeling telling them it's fine, Hearts will fall away and we'll still win the league. Whereas if it was Rangers, people probably wouldn't think like that.
No, that's a very fair point. I do think, as you're saying, a subconscious bias against Hearts in that sense. They've seen Aberdeen last year fall away. We've spoke about how it's very different to that. But I think people have got the notions in their head that obviously they're going to drop points, but it goes back to what we were saying. How are we going to make up the points if we can't find consistent form and results? So it's a real pain in the arse having to talk about this.
Yeah, and just before we get into the Rodgers stuff, I think this is the point I wanted to bring up, and I'll come to you, Dylan, here. But without actually talking about the status of his job right now, it does feel like maybe even him himself is maybe checked to it a bit. I think we've spoke about some of the tactical decisions. We've spoke about some of the problems with putting somebody on here or taking somebody off there. I mean, one of the big ones at the weekend was you take off Sebastian Tenekte, and what do you bring on in place of that, because you lose everything direct about your team, the only direct thing that's there about your team. Do you think that that's the case? We've spoken about the players and how some of them seem to be marching into like the end of their Celtic careers. Do you think Rodgers has just accepted that? Is that what it looks like for you? I see Kieran nodding, but is that what that looks like to you from the outside at this moment in time? Because a lot of people seem to think that.
I think he is.
Aye.
I think you just look at even in his interviews and that, and it's just like, even last week with the Dundee, it's like he doesn't believe. Obviously, he'll say like he's doing his best to work with the players and that, but I think himself doesn't believe this team's good enough to think with this season, carry on with results and that. Like, you look at the Dundee and Hearts game, and then just like that, you see Rodgers after the thing talk about obviously comparing it to the vehicles and that, but it's just like, you look at Brendan Rodgers and he's like, I don't know, I just don't feel that same way I felt about him the last couple of seasons in his first spell. Like, it just, there's something no right and the vibes off with Rodgers, and I just like, I don't see his heart and
right, well, let's get to it. We may as well. There's no point in beating around the bush. Is there anything from the weekend that you would like to mention?
There was one point, I seen it on Twitter. I mean, I didn't watch the post-match press conferences because I was just frankly far too scunnered. But it was his comments about, he was asked about Tenekte.
Yep.
And was it never an option to play him out on the right? And his answer was, no, he's a left-sided player. I wouldn't play him on the right. But somebody went and pulled the screenshot. The statement that got put out alongside when he was signed for Celtic, right. And Brendan Rodgers clearly says in that he's happy to have the option because he can play both sides.
And I think he's played the right for Tunisia.
So what has changed? What has changed in the 2 months that he's now no trusted to play in this dual role if required, which was lauded by Brendan Rodgers when we
there's always a joke that goes about when these statements are made when we sign players, and it's that the manager isn't actually making these comments. Is that confirming that maybe that somebody's just pretending to be Brendan Rodgers in these
comms teams? You'll find that a lot of it is just sort of written for them and kind of okayed. So, but then again, football is very different for a normal company. So we should be getting the actual words of the manager.
See that as well, like when he was talking about a press conference, he was talking about he wanted a left-footed centre-back. Like, that wasn't a problem last season when he played them against Atlanta. And it was actually a decent, I know Smike had a good couple of saves that day, but they still had a solid performance considering we didn't have Carter Vickers. So
you know me, I know we're about to get into the conversation about his job and the validity of that, because I'm obviously a very well-known Rodgers supporter, but I mean, at this point in time, big things have to be questioned. And one of the things that I did question about all of that was, like, we talk about the Rodgers ego, and for years we've always been able to laugh about it because typically Celtic have been doing pretty well and we've been able to laugh about it. Right now, we can't. And I can't help but shake the feeling that there is this, you know, we've always made a joke, Rodgers proving a point. And I feel like, I don't even feel like he's trying to prove a point to the board or anything anymore. I feel like he's trying to prove a point to everybody else. Like, I will do it my way and it will work, and then yous will have to accept that I had it right. And I don't know if he's digging himself a grave and he's just refusing to get out of it, but I feel like he's went in far too deep with this. I'm not playing him in the right. I'm not playing him because he's played in this foot. I feel like this is just, he's backed himself into a corner, and instead of just admitting defeat, he's like, nope, I will do it until I get it right. And that's the vibe I'm getting right now. And a lot of people have thought about that about him for a long time, to be fair, but now more than ever, I think it's very prevalent.
I know. I think tactically you're spot on, because it does feel that way, because we've obviously joked on this. Rodgers making a statement, I'm gonna please Stoke. But it does feel like that, and you're at the point as well. We're talking about obviously his comments. It's old news now about the Honda Civics and Ferraris and stuff, but you can get away with being an arrogant bastard when you're doing well. that does not fly when we are playing as poorly as this.
I said it in the chat earlier when we were talking about this. There's not a football manager on the planet that isn't an arrogant bastard. You need to be an arrogant bastard to become a manager. If you fancy yourself that much to lead a group of players into war, you are an arrogant bastard. Andrew's an arrogant bastard. You see the way he talks to the press. Everybody's an arrogant bastard. But Rodgers has got a way about him that I think that when it goes well, it can fly, but when it doesn't go well, it's really bad. Like, it can be bad, but it goes really bad for Rodgers.
That's why else, like, the vibe feels off with Rodgers, because, like, Rodgers is a really smart person. Like, you see him in the media in the last couple of years now, and he's always got it right. And, like, see this season, this is the most I've ever really been annoyed at Rodgers, because I'm like, there's a lot of times this season, not just at the weekend, where he's made a lot of baffling decisions, and I'm like, Rodgers hasn't really been like that. So it's like, see, just talk about, like, forget Taneki and the right and that, see, just taking him off as well, I thought was bizarre. Because like, in the first half, I think he was the one making stuff happen. Played his part playing at Tierney for the goal and that, and like you just look at him and you think he could make something happen, and you bring on Balak-Wisha, and again he was just so underwhelming, and like why even take him off in the first place? Like there's just some stuff he's been doing this season, and I'm like, nah, it's just something right.
I know, because that is the thing. You made the point there, Dylan, about how he's the man making these decisions that's making everybody question him. If you do try and look at it from both viewpoints, you can say, right, the tools he's been given obviously aren't up to scratch. We've not got the squad maybe needed to play a style of football, but when you're taking off Taneki, for example, who's your most direct threat in a game where we're 2 goals down, and you're then relying on James Forrest, 34-year-old James Forrest, once again to be the creative spark on the pitch. And it's not even a slight on James Forrest, but I think just being in this situation right now, and even though he does come on and he still seems to be putting in a good shift for Celtic, I think just it's a sad indictment we're in this situation that we are relying on James Forrest to come on and try and drag us back into a game.
I just want to make it clear, we're about to go into the Rodgers conversation, but I don't want to get into the Rodgers conversation without even just mentioning it one time at least. Fuck the people at the top who have let us go walk into this situation, because listen, as you said, it doesn't have to be one or the other. We are going to talk about Rodgers just now, and we are going to criticise Rodgers for a lot of things, but it cannot be forgetting the absolute self-harm that they Muppets at the top have put us in here, what they've done to this club. It is outrageous, and I cannot believe there is still fans that walk among us that look at them as these idols and these saviours of the football club. Oh, they've won so many trophies. I don't care. I really do not care. The fact that we are here after the heights that we were at, it's recent as February, just makes me fucking sick. I cannot believe they've done it to this club. I really can't.
Especially when you
forget that.
Especially when you think about the statement that as well, and like even early on before the Kairat game even happened, we were all sitting here on the pod thinking it could be a concern if like they don't get it right, and like we were going through the transfer windows, like leaving it late and blah blah, and then look at us now, like 8 points behind Hearts, out the Champions League, could lose to Rangers and boot the cup. So like you add all that into the equation, and it's like this was what everybody was concerned about going into the season, but we were in the rank for like.
Oh, but it's alright, because if you bring it up to Nicholson, he'll shrug his shoulders. It's fine, it's alright, it's fine. Brendan Rodgers is under a lot of pressure, and people are making their thoughts perfectly clear. It feels like we are witnessing. I'm not even going to use all the imagery and that reform candidate. It's an analogy or whatever it is. He says, can't remember. I'm not going to get into all that, but it feels like this is it. It's coming to the end, whether it's in the coming weeks or whether it is just at the end of the season. I think there has been this wide public acceptance that we are witnessing the end of Brendan Rodgers' Celtic career, probably. So I did put out a poll on the podcast's Twitter account, which you can follow at Sellik Podcast, saying that I wanted to get the listeners' opinions. And of course, this is a very small pool of samples. This is of listeners. Vote below if you think it's time up already for Brendan Rodgers, or if you think it's still premature. We'd also appreciate any comments on what you've voted, so we'll get into a few of them after our discussion. So I gave 3 options: Rodgers out, Rodgers in, or not yet, for those who are maybe leaning in a certain direction but haven't made their mind up. 64% of 365 voters are Rodgers out on that poll, which is of course more than half. Only 13% remain Rodgers in without any quarrel, and 23% are at the not yet phase, and I think a lot of that is going to be caveated with the result pending on Sunday. So Brendan Rodgers is in a tough situation, and following the game on Sunday, the first thing that I turned to see on my phone was a notification from a Mr. Kieran Auld saying that he believes he's now a Rodgers out man. Tempers have maybe simmered a little bit, but do you still feel that same way? Where are you? Are we looking at numbered days for the manager?
Well, the way we were talking about it earlier in the chat as well, the main thing that I think you said there about caveating the not yet vote on that with being hinging on Sunday. I think this week is monumental. It's do or die for Brendan Rodgers, I think, because I think even the most hardened Rodgers in right now.
I'm not actually hardened Rodgers in at the minute. I just
But
want to make that clear.
I'm just saying,
I am a huge Rodgers fan, but
for any strongholds out there for Brendan Rodgers, I think if Sunday goes terribly and we get put out, everybody that's on that not yet thing will be wanting Rodgers out. And I right now, obviously, tempers are very high after a game. I'm still leaning towards, I don't think Rodgers, as we were talking about, I think he's backed himself into a corner. He's been let down big time by the board, but we're not seeing anything for this Celtic team to suggest that this is going to be a quick fix.
No.
That we've got the tools at our disposal to turn this around and get things going. We've not seen any flashes of it or nothing. One good performance is followed by yet another disastrous one. Stormgrass on Thursday gives you that wee glimmer of hope to having them decimated again at Tynecastle, which a lot of people were sceptical going into it. Fair enough, but it wasn't a free hit.
No.
Like, we are 8 points behind Hearts. As I said earlier on in the podcast, any other season, any other manager as well, if somebody said 8 points behind Hearts, who are top of the league, that on paper is a sackable offence. And I know some people will debate it and that, but that is shocking. And I think we're now at a point where this week, as I said, monumental. If we go and win on Sunday against Rangers, we might come more into the game later, I don't know, but it'll go away to getting people kind of back on side. But even if we do win, people are still going to have these reservations. We've got a lot of games coming up.
Once again, to be devil's advocate, just for the ones that I know will be in the comments section who will still be Rodgers in and whatnot, and listen, I've not made my thoughts crystal clear, I would say, but still, to be devil's advocate, would you say there is any, can you even forgive him slightly for that? Because I agree with you. I think it's a totally unacceptable headline that Celtic are 8 points behind Hearts by the beginning of November. I think that's inexcusable almost. But is there any part of you that can maybe excuse it even slightly because of the state of the squad, because of the pile-up in injuries, and because Hearts themselves have had a pretty untouchable start to the season? Is there any way you can look past all of that, or is it just still playing out it's just not on?
I mean, I think I've pondered this for weeks now. I've obviously took into account the fact that Hearts are obviously flying.
Aye.
And I'm never for a second going to sit here and pretend the board have not fucked the full club over, but obviously Rodgers,
Aye.
it feels like he's doing his job with his hands tied behind his back at times. But at the same time, there's only so long you can get away with being completely absolved of blame. And that's my main issue that I'm taking with people that are so vehemently Rodgers in, because they seem to have, even at this point where it's clear that he's making tactical errors in games, making wrong decisions, you can blame the board, and I do blame the board for much of what has happened this season, if not 99% of it. But Rodgers does have to take accountability, and I think he's kind of riding the wave. He's been able to chop and change. During the summer, he was coming out and saying stuff against the board, and then the next time he turns around, he's saying, no, they're good guys, and things like that. Things like that, you can't just flip your position. And now it feels like after the transfer window shut, he's rightfully saying that he's been let down.
Aye.
But that you can only get away with that for so long.
No, 100%.
And I think some
think you're
people
right.
out there are really the mindset that Rodgers isn't to blame for any of this. And I think that is what...
Is it dangerous to
annoys
think
me.
like that?
Aye, because if you absolve Rodgers of any blame, then obviously the board are to blame, but Rodgers is making decisions as well. He's
Still
got to be...
directly affects the football being played in the park. Aye.
Like, he just... That's my main thing, is people that are Rodgers in, that's fine, but you can't sit there and pretend he has done no wrong whatsoever.
Dylan, I've heard plenty of... I mean, I was with Kieran yesterday in person, and obviously we spoke in our group chat after the game, but I haven't heard anything you have to say. So I mean, just spill your guts, your Rodgers thoughts, your situational thinking right now, just everything you think about this current managerial position we find ourselves in.
It's a shame, but I honestly think I've got to that stage now where I'm feeling Rodgers out, just purely because it's like, it's sad to say, because obviously I'm a big Rodgers fan as well, and like, it's seen what you said, right, he's gave us some of the best moments of life and that, got us a lot of league titles. He's not lost a league title since being here, but I just can't help shrug off like the downfall since the Bayern game. It's like last season he got us out the Champions League groups, and that's just shows how incredible the downfall's been, because he couldn't beat Barry Ferguson at Parkhead, he couldn't beat Russell Martin. The only team not to can score it in the Russell Martin Ibrox and that. So it's like just all these big games where he's went. Even the weekend there we've lost Ferns quite hard. So it's like how long can you get away with that?
No.
It's like any other, as you said, any other manager would maybe get sacked for it. And like Rodgers shouldn't be excused. Like it's just been I think his football's getting really flat. And like I know people talk about that third season. Like last season when the Leipzig game was some of the best football I'd seen, and it's a shame that this came to this, because now I'm going into these games and I'm like the football's boring. Well, even the Hearts game there, we didn't even create many big chances in the second half.
Yeah, because it feels like when you get to a certain point, this is what to kind of add into what you're saying. It feels like sometimes when you get to a point, you know something's like it's. Let's use an analogy of when you know somebody's about to go, like you've accepted it, and and there's nothing you can do to bring them back. I don't mean to be morbid, everybody, but let's know we know the situations, right? But it almost feels like that's happening. There doesn't seem to be, and is this maybe how you feel about? It doesn't look as though Rodgers will maybe get that back. Like it feels like that's gone, and to get that back, it would take an insurmountable challenge. Like it would take a hell of a lot of work that maybe just isn't there for anybody, especially with time running out in his contract. Like feasibly, there isn't a lot of time for him to even get a tune out of this team before he inevitably leaves at the end of the season anyway. So it's just to mention or kind of link it back to what you were saying, it does just feel like, I don't know, that downfall is just going to keep going down, and there's really no hope that anybody's going to pull it back.
I think that way. See, when you talk about if Billy Stiles will go, like I think it was going to be inevitable that it was going to leave anyway. So, but it's just that way. Like you're looking at Brendan Rodgers, we've said about it. I don't think he can get a tune at this team, and it's like it's sad for me to say. It's just how I feel. See, when you're getting into these games and you're feeling frustrated at them, it just shows you what you feel.
Aye.
And then I feel sadly. I hope I'm wrong. Like, I always would love if Brendan Rodgers could turn that around, but I just can't see it. That's just how I feel, and it's a shame it's been ended this way, because he's gave us a lot of good moments, but. It's just the concern about no winning these big games, beating Rangers in so long, and it's like it's coming to an end, I think.
Sorry, Kieran.
No, just what you said there at the end about winning these big games. When was the last big game we won?
Probably the League Cup final, you would assume.
Aye.
Approaching
A year ago. Aye. On penalties. The last time we played Rangers and put in what most people would call a decent performance was over a year ago.
Was Young Boys after the League Cup? Young Boys is probably the answer then. That was after the League Cup final. But the same time period, you're talking about 20 days of difference, or 30 days of difference probably. Aye.
But you're at a point now where we're not winning these big games. I mean, Dylan already said it, talking about we didn't score a goal into Russell Martin. Every other team made them look like the team they were.
This is the point. Sorry to cut you off.
No.
This is because obviously I think there's still this narrative within my comment section that still think that I'm staunch Rodgers, and I'm absolutely not. I'm swaying in the other direction very, very quickly, and I am with the best intentions directed towards the manager. But I think the biggest thing for me is it's inexcusable, our derby record at the minute, and it's inexcusable that this. Let's just tie it into big games. If you can't beat Barry Ferguson, let me just make one thing crystal clear. This Rangers team, over the past 12 months in particular, is the worst Rangers side there has ever been, and that's not just opinion. That is fact. They can't win games at Ibrox. They can't win games away from home. They can't keep a manager. They are a terrible, terrible team with a terrible, terrible way of working right now. And the fact that Brendan Rodgers has failed to beat a radio host in Barry Ferguson, and the fact he's failed to beat Russell Martin, who is now the worst manager in the history of their club, and if he goes on to lose to a guy who will be on his 4th game in charge by the weekend, I really don't think there's any excuses to defend Rodgers at that point. That's why if I was to vote in my own poll, I want Rodgers to turn this round so bloody much, and I would love him to go to the end of the season, walk away with another treble and run off into the sunset. Do I think that's going to happen? Absolutely not. And if Sunday isn't a win, I don't think there's a leg to stand on for him.
I think it's that way as well. See, like the no beating Martin and Ferguson and that. It's like it's not even as if like we battered them all game and didn't get the goal.
Exactly.
Like it was absolutely dreadful. It was like there was nothing, absolutely nothing in that game at Ibrox. Even the one each game last season where he does equalised, like it still wasn't a good performance. No. And then the 3-2 game, albeit we played better in the second half, but you were still getting yourself a mountain to climb, and going 2-0 down that early was quite embarrassing to that Rangers team. And we were getting away with it, let's be honest, because we were 13 points clear at the time and stuff.
Aye.
Like, you're looking at it now, and even that Hearts game there, like, albeit I thought the first half we were alright, but second half, after they scored 3-1, you knew it was over. We had like 1 or 2 half chances. Like, I think that's the main concern for me. There feels like there's no spark, no creativity, no nothing anymore.
I think one of the other things, the other thing for me is just to even take away emotion from it for a minute. If he was to get beaten Sunday, I mean, unless he wants to stay and finish the season, whatever, cool. What would even be the point? I mean, what has he got left to accomplish? Like, we are not going to go on a run in the Europa League. He's not going to get that treble that he came back to win. You know, all he can do is go on and hopefully win a double, which doesn't look very likely. I think that we're actually arguably talking at a point. This is the thing. If Rodgers were to hypothetically go, I want to make it clear, and I will not change my thoughts on this. If he were to hypothetically go after the weekend or any time soon, unless he done significant amounts of damage to his own reputation, he would go in my best wishes. I mean that. Like, I appreciate everything he's done for the club. He's been a great manager. Sad things have went the way they have, but I'll understand the circumstances surrounding it and he'll go in my best wishes. But we are verging on the territory of what happened in COVID, where Neil Lennon just refused to walk, done unparalleled amounts of damage to his reputation that nobody's ever done at the club before. I mean, Rodgers is in danger of sleepwalking into that territory if he doesn't hold his hands up and admit, I'm not going to get this right, and it's better off if I go just now.
Do you think, but see, just think for that viewpoint as well, see with Rodgers, do you think he's at a point now where if he was to get sacked if we got beat off Rangers, that in itself would rule him out of getting a job for a long time in the English Premier League? Do you think he's knowing that, he's like, I need to stay and try and salvage this, and that's my only route into another job? Because realistically, if he was to lose on Sunday against Rangers and get sacked, not saying the board would go out and sack him, knowing the way the board operates, but if that was to happen,
I don't think they will.
Like, how is that an attractive prospect to any team?
Yeah.
To a decent level to go and get him as a manager?
I think it's a right moral dilemma for Rodgers in the sense that he'll be looking at, I think there's two angles for him to look at it, in my opinion. You've got the angle of, this is going to be hard for me to turn it round. I'm not going to get a job in England, as you say. I still think that Rodgers has done enough in his career to still attract some pretty decent jobs. Maybe not the jobs of a calibre he'd like, but still some decent jobs. If you're a team that's struggling in the bottom half of England and Rodgers is available, I think they still give him a punt if there's not much on the line. Maybe, no guaranteeing that. But I also think there's the other moral side of it where he looks at it and goes, should I walk now? Because the first time I left this club, I done a lot of damage to my relationship with Celtic supporters. I think if Rodgers was to at least look at it from the sense, I want to be able to come back to Celtic one day, not in a managerial sense, but I want to be able to come on the pitch, I want to be able to do events, I want to be able to talk to the supporters, I want to be able to be looked at in a pleasant light. He still has the opportunity to do that, I think, if he walks away, even if that's acknowledging that I might not get a great job. Whereas if he stays and things get worse, he's going to be remembered for being the rat in his first term, and he's going to be remembered as the guy that caused a significant downfall in his second term. And I don't know if that's really something that's attractive for Brendan Rodgers. I think that's a real worry for him.
I know. I want nothing more than this to get turned around. I don't have an agenda against Brendan Rodgers. Whilst I might be leaning towards, I think his time is coming to an end, we could go out and win Wednesday, win on Saturday, turn this around.
Yep.
But we are just looking at it objectively, the fact that there is nothing that has happened this season that gives you any real basis to have that belief.
Because there's a very real possibility. Here, listen, there's a world, there's a universe where Celtic win on Wednesday, they win on Sunday, Hearts lose on Wednesday, Hearts lose on Sunday, and down the line we all look back at this wee month and this wee period and go, oh, we got ourselves into some panic. But that doesn't feel realistic.
It feels different this time. And as much as I would like to hold that optimism, and I know you're not saying that's your way of looking at things, but it feels like that's the way some of the support are looking at it. And we spoke about it earlier, but it feels like they're just sort of got that optimism with no real evidence to back it up. So we're looking at it from a current objective viewpoint. Right now it's not looking good for him, and I think the title of your video, it's going to be about this being a do or die week for Brendan Rodgers.
It feels like that.
Especially if we do lose on Sunday, like, it's going to be toxic and it's going to be chaotic.
Really will.
Because that's like a lot of your season already in danger, and it could just get worse. Because like we've spoken about it on our podcast, it's like, who do we look at the now and like see it's changing this season around? Like, you might be playing Yamada on Sunday, a guy that's not even in the Europa League squad. It's like, I don't know.
And that's, you're right though, you're on it there, because, you know, there is, as you said, there's the Celtic supporters out there that think we'll be fine Wednesday, we'll be fine Sunday and everything will be rosy. But can you actually look at this Celtic squad and think that's going to happen? Like, Rodgers aside for a minute, we've got to use this group of players until January. Do I have any faith the board are going to go out in January and give Rodgers the tools he would need to turn it around? Absolutely fucking not. So exactly. I think you're bang on, Dylan.
Especially because they've not done it the last couple of windows.
It'll get toxic. It'll get really, really hard. We'll have people booing at Celtic Park. We'll have people booing every. It's just I don't see where the upturn comes if we don't win this game on Sunday. This is a huge week for everybody, for absolutely everybody at the club. And it's a shame because we've just got to suffer through it, I suppose.
Because you've got people talking about spending a way out it in January. I'm like, what January transfer window have you seen Celtic spend significant money in that you think that is going to happen? Like, we need to get ourselves to January, and we need recruitment. We need to have better recruitment. We need to get players in the door. We need to get players out. But how do you have the faith that the Celtic board are going to be able to do that?
And also, this is another thing that annoys me. I don't want to get dragged. This is a completely different podcast in itself, and where's the guarantee of spending your way out of it? I know this is Scotland, and some people think, it doesn't matter because if you get good players, they'll come here and play anyway. What if Manchester United and Chelsea and all these clubs tried over the last decade? They've tried to spend their way out of problems, and what have they got to show for it? Sweet fuck all. They've got nothing. So we can say, we'll spend our way out of it. What happens if we go and drop 7 million in a midfielder and they play like Benjamin Nigre? Or what happens if we go and spend 10 million on a striker that gets injured in his first week in training? Or what happens if we go and spend 20 million on a new group of defenders that come in and can't fucking kick their own arse? These are people just assume that spending your way out of it is a guarantee. But there's also the flip side where all of them could be fucking duds. And that just doesn't get acknowledged. So I don't think there is any guarantees about this. I don't think there's any avenues that we can go down, either positively or negatively. I think it's very easy to get, let's go, it's all going to be bad. It can't be good, it's all going to be bad. But I don't think there's any guarantees on either side. None at all.
Nah. As we've said, it's a massive week, and hopefully we're looking back on this in a week's time and things are looking a wee bit better. But right now it's just hard to see out of the dark clouds that seems to be over the club now. But the last thing I will say on that, I don't know how many more points we've got to go through. I know we're trying to keep this under the hour mark, but see if Rodgers was to go in the not so distant future. Who do we get? I mean, as much as I'm saying I'm leaning more towards it, who do you think this board would be able to get in at this stage of the season?
And do you have faith that we get it right?
No.
Do you have the faith that this board can make the right appointment?
That's the gamble. Even me, I mean, I'm saying that I'm leaning more towards being on the last tether with Rodgers, but if we were,
do you know what's going to happen?
In that situation?
Let me spell it out for you right fucking now. If Rodgers, and I've made it clear, I don't think Rodgers will get sacked. I don't see a world in which Peter Lawwell, Michael Nicholson, Chris Mackay sit down and go, why should we pay him out millions of quid when he's going to be gone at the end of the year anyway? I don't see them sacking Rodgers. Rodgers would have to walk. If Rodgers walks, if Rodgers isn't here this time next week, which I think would be insane, if that happens, we will need to fucking sprint to this studio. John Kennedy is going to be in charge to the end of the season. I'm almost fucking certain of it. I just don't see a world in which they make an appointment right now, especially if the only option they have in Ange Postecoglou turns around and goes, no. If Ange says no, who's the only option I think this board have at this exact moment, by the way, I'm not even wanting Ange back that much. I want us to be fresh. I want us to go forward in a different direction. But if Ange was to say no, I think John Kennedy's a guarantee to be manager to the end of the year.
I think that's a good point, because I think either way, even if we do get put in the cup, as you said there, Ryan, right, I don't think they're going to have the guts to sack Rodgers right away and bring somebody in quick. That's not how Celtic's ever operated with this board. So he would just do that. Wait till Rodgers leaves at the end of the season, then try and do something. But as you said there, I'm kind of in the mixed window of that as well, because I don't think Ange would come back anyway. Ange is the sort of guy I think would want a new challenge every time he does something. Albeit even though he was loved here and that and had a good relationship with the fans, but I think I'm the same as you. I'd probably want somebody fresh just because even the squad now is there's no hunger, no desire. You need somebody to come in and lift these players up.
Of course, and Ange could do that, don't get me wrong, but my opinion, and I want to make it clear right now, I'm not saying no to Ange. If Ange was on the table, like he's a fucking pig with a fucking apple on his lip, if Ange was on the table, right, and he said, I'd happily come back, I'll do it, am I passing up on him? No, absolutely no. I'm not going to say no at all. All I'm saying is I would rather prioritise Celtic actually looking for a fresh approach and taking the club forward rather than back again. And I know a lot of people go, but he's the best, and I do get that. Once again, I'm not saying he's a bad candidate. I'm not saying he's a candidate I'd say 100% naughty. I just think that we are in danger of constantly going round in these circles, and we need to break that at some point. And I'm really concerned about us going in circles still.
I know. I mean, because on the face of it does sound ridiculous to say, why would you not take Ange back, because he was so loved, he done so well here. But I always thought I'd definitely take Ange back. But now I'm in the mind of just thinking with how this is all turning out with Rodgers now. I mean, obviously we've had 2 brilliant years as well, but when you're in this situation, it does just feel like a symptom of a cyclical nature that Celtic.
100%.
It's always the easy option. I mean, as much as I was buzzing to have Jota back as well, he's obviously injured now, and hopefully he's a big player when he comes back. But that in itself is also an indictment of constantly going back to familiarity.
I know what people want to say to me. Ryan, were you the guy that days after Ange left the club, you were the first on YouTube to make a video saying, bring back Brendan Rodgers? Yes, I was, and I hold my hand. And at the time, that's how I felt. And I don't regret saying that. I was happy with it. And I still would be if I'm looking back on it now. But I have also now learned the lessons of that systematic problem of going back to your ex.
At that time, we needed the stability. I still maintain at the time, Brendan Rodgers was the best man for the job, because we were in a position where the other side of the city were licking their lips thinking, right, they've got rid of arguably their best manager in years, and now they're going to be vulnerable. We needed somebody to come in and kind of steady the ship and try and carry over what Ange done. And that season wasn't pretty.
And to be fair, he did do it, to be fair. Albeit some games were like rusty,
it was
but
a bit shaky.
The season was touch and go, but I mean,
he's still done enough.
But
2 doubles, so, but...
No, well, it's mental we're sitting here. I mean, a couple of months ago we could have said this exact thing could happen, but I think we could have foreseen exactly how
if you told me even 2 months ago that we'd be talking about potential next managers at Celtic, I would have laughed at you. I can't believe we're here.
Especially as well, see, you're talking about going back to the X thing. Even like, that's the danger. Like, even if Ange comes back, like, who's to say it'll be all rosy?
I don't want to see him damage his reputation.
Look what's happened to Lennon, right? And look, the path Rodgers dangerously could be going down right now. Do you really want that to happen to Ange? Even Tierney, look at, we were all buzzing for Tierney to come back. Now everybody, like, Tierney's is rocking down that road as well.
The last thing I want to be thinking of if Ange Postecoglou is, and not if he came in here and it goes as badly as it went at Nottingham Forest, which I don't think would happen, but if it did, I would be fucking sick to my stomach. I would be absolutely devastated.
I don't want that to happen, and I think just for me as a closing statement on all of this talk that we've went on about Rodgers, and we've all made our opinions very clear about where we stand on it, I think it is important to highlight again that this all does go back to the board.
Yep.
Whilst we can criticise Rodgers, and as I've made my point as to why that's completely fair to do, the board still need chased out of this club. They have put us in this position, as Ryan said earlier. We are sat around this table talking about these issues that are impacting our club because of the people at the very top who, for the summer transfer window, have refused to back the manager, have refused to upgrade the playing squad, to try and build on the success that we all thought was so attainable last season. I left the Allianz in February full of optimism for what lay ahead. Even if we were to lose players, I had this sort of, now looking back on it, naivety.
Yep, that's the word.
That we could build on it, and that we as a club are now trying to take this a bit more serious.
I felt like we were going into a new era.
It really did feel like that. It felt like we were at a turning point. But now, as I said, it was very naive of me to even believe for a second that we could have done that.
To be fair, I feel like everybody was like that. Wasn't it just you? Most of the Celtics.
Before I took a fucking slip down the Allianz stairs and nearly fucking cracked my skull. I was on top of the world thinking about the future. I wasn't on top of the world. I was fucking devastated, but I was at least in the back of my head. I was going, we've got a right fucking good team here. We've got a manager who is top level. And as long as we keep going on the right track, we'll be fine. And here we fucking are because of the crooks that run our fucking football club. I hope they're hanging their heads in fucking shame. I have no fear. I've met Michael Nicholson. I've shook the man's hand, and if I had the chance to meet him again, which I don't think I will anytime soon, I don't see myself on any invite lists at Celtic Park with this current management. If I was to look at him in the eyes again, I would say as politely as I fucking could, right enough, because I'm at least professional to some extent. You have killed this fucking joy in our support. You have fucking took us for granted and you've robbed us fucking blind. That's what you've done, and I would love to say that maybe without the explanatories or the explicities of the words I'm using there. But yeah,
I will have it done to a T when the
time comes. When the time comes. Nah. Listen, I do want to get somebody. Listen, we'll try to wrap this up in the next kind of 10 minutes. We are going to do a Thunder Club where we'll probably get a wee bit more rowdy. But some of the opinions below that post were asked for the poll, just to get some people's views in here. The boy said Rodgers in. He's done it before. He can do it again, even with a poor Celtic team. It's all about keeping the faith, baby. So that's,
I'm sorry to cut you off.
No,
as I said before, I appreciate that optimism, and I wish I could share that right now. But I think he's just still too clouded for it. I don't know about you, Dylan, but.
Like, we hope it happens, but it's just not looking very likely.
No, and especially after Sunday, I don't think we'll share that same if we're out, I don't think we'll share that same kind of like, oh, I wish for it to happen. I think we'll all be like, no, it's done. It's finished.
Because even like Rodgers' previous teams and then like Ange and that, like we've seen Celtic teams in the past, even it'd be a wee bit of worry, but you always have faith to turn it around. This is the first time in a long time where I've no felt anything for a Celtic team pulling it back.
Numb.
When that third goal went in on Sunday, I genuinely at the time felt I could turn this telly off and I'd know exactly how this game's finishing. And that is horrible.
Concerning.
Yep. Steve saying, I was Rodgers in till the end of the season, but his baffling decisions have turned me. I don't feel angry about it. I just feel it's time for new ideas and getting a man now to see what he has and what he could do in January and the summer. Bus Stop Bukowski says, none of the above. Have you got a sack the board option? That's the only option we should be triggering. Dembele Dink also saying, why focus on the manager? The board is the root and the cause that needs sorted. Then a lot of people coming in with the kind of views like Lewis here. If he loses on Sunday, I'll officially be Rodgers out. Seems to be a lot of comments similar to that. You know, if Sunday's the big one, but a lot of comments talk about how things have got stale. Maybe it's time for fresh ideas. It does seem like there is a real divide in it, but I think we know what direction it's kind of heading in. To be quite honest.
I mean, just for hearing the comments, and I think it was very important is to caveat what we did say. Around the discussion around Rodgers, that in us talking about this in no way means that we are bold apologists or in any way taking their side. I think we made it abundantly clear that the two don't need to be polar opposite opinions. They can both be held and both can be acknowledged. But I know, as we were saying as well, Sunday, we've spoken about this full hour or however long we've been talking, but it is massive.
We've got about 5 minutes till I think we're at the hour mark. So let me try and horn in some viewers' questions very, very quickly. I hope you appreciate that there's been no quizzes and such this week. It feels like it's not really the time for that. Paul started off with saying, if Lawwell, Nicholson and a wee old guy were drowning in the Clyde, what would you say to the wee old guy when you save him? Which is a great start, thanks Paul. Is it possible that the bad start to the season is linked to the closure of Best Kebab, says Aaron?
Is that not open?
I think it's
open again. It's reopened, I'm pretty sure.
So is it a bit of both then? Like the backups also just.
Right, let's get into actually a couple of serious ones. We'll try and keep it brief for your answers if we can. First of all, thoughts on Lennon's comments in Sky? Aidan asks. He's just he does himself no favours, and I have no. Do you know what? I feel even fucking slightly guilty that I was starting to get a wee bit. You know, Clenny. You know what? I still don't forgive him for what he's done, but he's a Sellik man. He always has been a Sellik man. He's been through a lot, and I respect him to a certain extent. I can't believe after all these years he's still fucking flapping his gums in that fashion for the fucking board. Like, how much special treatment can you give him? It pisses me off.
Just what you said there, Ryan. Like, just when you started, like, it's been a couple of years and you've won league titles, like, could it all be it? We've overtook Rangers now, so like Neil Lennon will just slowly try and forgive him. Like, at the end of the day, like, he went through a lot in his first spell, gave us a lot of good moments as well, beating Barca and it, and you're just like, you want to like him again and Lennon and that, but it's just, as you said, he's just digging a Celtic grave in it with the Celtic support. It's like, why come out and that and then just sticking with Boyd and against it? I'm just like,
we've got a stony-faced Kieran Auld in the middle who's never budged his opinion on it.
No, I mean, even me, as much as I've made my opinions on Neil Lennon clear on the years on this podcast, and even in the aftermath of the COVID season, I never forgave him. I was starting to lean to the point where I definitely have not forgave him, and I could not understand how any Celtic fan could have. But I was starting to maybe know grimace every time I seen him on the telly.
That's the same feeling.
Or heard him on a podcast or something. But as you said, he does himself no favours. He's more than happy to be a charlatan for these things. And for me, Neil Lennon, when it comes to the Celtic sport, there's got to be people that are obviously minds made up and things like that. I don't care. I mean, Neil Lennon, he's far from my cup of tea. Yeah. And I can acknowledge the good things he's done for this club in the past, but you can also acknowledge that he takes the piss in the media.
Aye. No, I guess nail on the head. I think it was never a point of forgiveness. Maybe for me with Lennon, it was more a point of like, oh well, do you know what, things went their ways, and that's what it is. I'm not going to be so angry about it. Was maybe the way that I was leaning, but ho hum. A couple of more very, very quickly. Is it fair to say the treatment of Dane Murray has been awful? Rodgers gave him 9 minutes against Braga and threw him into our biggest league game this season whilst leaving out a $6 million international defender. As I kind of alluded to this earlier, I've maybe not been as... My opinion on the Dane Murray stuff has been a bit different because I think we would have still got pumped with Trusty in the park. And I think if Trusty was in the park, then people would have went, well, why is young Dane Murray on the bench? I genuinely could have seen that happening. So I've not shared a lot of the same opinion, but I do agree that it was very short-sighted and that it should have probably been considered. Trusty, fair enough, coming back from an injury. But I just think, well, that's shite, it doesn't matter.
I think it's just like, it's not even Murray I was annoyed at. I think it's just more always been a Rodgers thing. Like, no to get into Rodgers too much, right? But I said it to you last season as well. It's even like centre back things. It's always been Rodgers, like with Rocky Lagerbielke. Like, you're spending money on these defenders, bringing in Simpson Pewsey, and I'm just like, why? What is the point if you're not going to play these players? And then to throw Murray in ahead, like, let's be like, he said it doesn't matter, but I think it does. Like, if you're paying $6 million for a defender, and it's like he should be starting these games, like, albeit because Murray's, like, as you said, he's only had what, 9 minutes, was it? So like, why are you throwing him into? I know Trusty's been in, but you still feel like he's had the experience to go in, shoved into a game of that magnitude, and then it was a gamble that's no paid off, to be fair.
I think the reason I have the opinion I have is because I done a pre-match live stream, and I shit you not, there was this fucking unanimous decision in the chat. I had about 700 people watching live, and I didn't see many comments going, "Oh fuck, Murray's playing. Why is he playing Murray?" The opinion that I saw was fair plays at the boys to play Donovan and Murray. And that's why I actually do agree with what everybody is saying. But the reason I'm not fucked off about it is because I just know that if it was the other way about, that people would have been going, "Why is he left Murray in the bench?" I just know that would have happened.
Why is no youth getting a chance?
Exactly. And if Pewsey played, it would have been, we've got our own young player that we should be focused on. I just think that in these situations, everybody just fucking moans, and rightfully so, because things are shite. But like, I just don't think it would have been this big fix. But I agree with what you're saying. No, I do 100%. Right, maybe get one more before we wrap up. A lot of talk about obviously the Boyd and Lennon situation with Chris Sutton. If Celtic had Jamestown analytics, do you think we'd have better recruitment, or do you think we'd still lowball clubs and miss out on our targets?
The one thing I will raise about this, and I'm sure I've seen a couple of people say it on Twitter, if Celtic announced they were signing somebody for the Norwegian second division, we would go apeshit.
Yep.
Their fan base would lose it.
Aye.
And guarantee you they would not be starting games to the level that these... If Hearts can sign these calibre of players, I'm not saying they're inferior, they beat us comfortably on Sunday, but I'm just saying if Celtic was to sign them, they would not be getting the game time that has allowed them to flourish like they have for Hearts. We're obviously shot them in different pools. I'm not saying their pool's any better because their recruitment has been fucking woeful. But I think it is important to know if Celtic had these analytics and we were signing the same level of player as Hearts, people would be raging. So, I don't know. I think you need to look at it for both sides.
Well, it's a conversation for another day. Listen, we're going to wrap up the main episode here. Thunder Club members will see you for a wee bonus period of time if you're there. I
don't know if you'd call it a bonus.
Kieran's chuffed. Thank you, Dylan. Thank you, Kieran. We will be back next week, again earlier in the week, because some of us are off to Denmark and yada yada. So we'll see you then. It could be a big episode. We'll just have to wait and see. We'll see you next time.